Hi there, esteemed audience, and welcome to yet another episode of Middle Grade Ninja, the return of the Speed City Sisters of Crime. I'm your host, Rob Kent. As you know, I'm the author of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees, which is a middle grade mystery novel, and it is available now as a paperback and audiobook, and the ebook is free, yes, free, to download whenever you're watching or listening to this, wherever fine ebooks are sold. Under the super secret pen name Robert Kent, I've written the Book of David and other horror novels, but the Book of David is a nice long mystery novel set here in Indiana about an atheist who purchases a haunted house that then begins to give him religious visions, and the recurring sounds of John Mellencamp singing Jack and Diane, which I feel is a very Indiana thing to happen. So for more information about that, more information about me and everything that's good in this world, including interviews with thousands of editors, literary agents, authors, all the world's best people, head to middlegradeninja.com. And that's all the time we have for intro. My God, there's 6 of us tonight. 7, including me. So we've got a very busy night. We've had the return of the Speed City Sisters of Crime. They're back with a new anthology. It could be more excited. I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about your background. And I'm going to start with our returning champion, Tony Perona. Tony, hi.
Hi. I didn't know I was a returning champion, but boy, I like that. Okay, well, I've got my daughter Liz here with me, and together we write under the name Elizabeth Perona. And I was, before Liz and I joined forces, I wrote a mystery series about a stay-at-home dad, former investigative reporter, who has a knack for solving mysteries with supernatural elements. Liz and I have joined together, and we produced the Bucket List Mystery Series, which is about a group of older women who are trying to accomplish all the strange and wonderful things on their bucket list, but they keep stumbling over dead bodies. And so, Liz, do you want to say anything?
No. I know I always used to tell people I was a preschool teacher, but I'm not a preschool teacher anymore.
But you're an administrator for your
yes,
church.
I'm an administrator at our church now, by day, and I do this on the side.
And you have 2 kids?
And I have 2 kids, and I'm married to my husband, Tim.
And then Diana, Catt, you're the other editor for the new anthology, Trick or Treat. You were just holding it up.
Yeah, this is it. It looks backwards on my view. But yeah, I'm Diana Catt, and I am a microbiologist, a scientist, and I like to write mysteries. I like to read mysteries. I have I'm a business owner as well, and I've got a couple of dozen short stories that are written. I think I have been involved in every anthology the Sisters in Crime has produced, and I think this might be number 8. Is that Tony's nodding? Yes, that's number 8. And then I have some other short stories that are in other anthologies produced elsewhere. How's that sound?
What's your business?
It is called Mold Diagnostics. It's an environmental microbiology laboratory. We do air quality testing, and I go in scary places like crawl spaces and attics and homes and look for mold, identify the kinds of mold that's present.
And you look for dead bodies too, don't you, Diana?
You know, I'm always on the lookout for dead bodies. I found some really strange things in my adventures over the years.
Not all human.
No, lots of critters.
Big spiders.
Big spiders, cave crickets, mice. Mice find those all the time, chipmunks and snakes, that kind of stuff.
How thoughtful would it be for someone to leave a mystery writer a dead body? Like, oh, I'm sorry for the person that's deceased, but what a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah. Well, my imagination went crazy. One time I was in a crawl space and there was this huge mound of dirt and then a little child's desk over in the corner, a desk and chair like you'd find in a grade school. And I thought, why the heck is that in the crawl space? It just freaked me out. And I said something to a contractor who was following me in there, and he said, you just got too crazy an imagination, settle down. But I do.
Elizabeth and Miguel, who was instrumental in putting this whole thing together, bringing this group together for this event tonight. You're next. What can you tell us about yourself?
This is actually only the second story I've ever had published. The other one was in Murder 2020. Oh, by the way, it's Sisters in Crime, not of Crime. Just a little correction there. And there's 8 people, not 7. So, but there's 7 boxes. My day job is I work as a SAS computer programmer. So that's a statistical database language. It's actually I find the job very interesting, but I think a lot of people would probably find it dull. So.
And Marianne?
Hi, thanks for having us. This is my second story in a Sisters in Crime anthology. And I joined probably 3 years ago. And I have a couple books that I've published. The first was Shards of Trust. And the second was The Cry Beyond the Door. And then during the pandemic, together with my granddaughter, Haley Landreth, we wrote Maybe Just Maybe. And really enjoyed that. It was a great way. She's out of state, so it was a great way to stay in touch. And I've had some stories published in newspapers and magazines as well.
And Karen Phillips, you're next on my screen.
You're muted, Karen.
Thanks, Rob. I have several short stories published in 5 different anthologies, and I really enjoy writing mystery. I'm working on a novel, but I keep getting distracted by writing short stories. And one of them that I wrote was collaborating with Ross Carley, and that is the story that's in Trick or Treats. So that was really fun to collaborate with an author. I've never done that before.
And Ross Carley, other than frequent collaborator with Karen Phillips, what's your background?
Well, I'm a professor emeritus of electrical and computer engineering at Purdue School of Engineering and Technology. Professor emeritus means that I'm retired from the university, but I'm still consulting in artificial intelligence and cybersecurity and cybercrime. I've written 4 nonfiction books, but I've also written 4 novels. 2 of them are murder mysteries, Dead Drive and Formula Murder, and 2 of them are cyber thrillers, Cyber Kill and Crypto Kill. Crypto Kill is the latest one that's currently out, but just today, literally today, finished my new book, and the cover is by Karen Phillips. This is a draft cover, but it's called The Three-Legged Assassin. And so The Three-Legged Assassin should be out by the end of November, I would think, at the latest. And Karen and I, we share cats too. Karen and I, it's the first time for me collaborating. I know Tony and Liz have collaborated forever, but it was dipping my toe into I guess you'd call our story The Curse of the Benjamin Mansion, kind of the horror genre. And I'd never really written that before. And Karen is very adept at writing horror. So we had a great time collaborating. She's in Sacramento. I'm here in the Indianapolis area. And she in fact did that cover I showed you for Crypto Kill. She designs book covers as well as being an author. So I've been in Sisters in Crime, I think 4 years now. And those of us who are male in Sisters in Crime are called the Mr. Sisters. So we're welcome in Sisters in Crime, and it's been a tremendous experience for me nationwide and meeting people from the other chapters like Sacramento, where Karen is.
Well, let's talk a little bit about collaboration, because I know, Liz, you're going to have to leave us a little early tonight. And I'm fascinated by the idea of working with your father on a novel. So how does that collaboration go, and how do you make sure that that part of your relationship stays professional and doesn't bleed over so that you're editing each other at Christmas or whatever?
Yeah, go ahead. I
Okay.
want to hear this one.
Oh, well, I was just gonna say how it works. We each have our own jobs. We at the beginning of a project, we sit down and map everything out together so that we know where we want the story to go. And then Dad takes over and kind of gets us from point A to point B. And then I come behind him and fill in details and edit things. And I'm usually the first set of eyes on things. And yeah, so that's how it works for us. So we don't like sit down next to each other and like write every word.
And the ideas come from different things, like the story that we have in Trick or Treats. That was actually Liz's idea, to drop the ladies in a haunted house, and so we kind of went from there. The novels have mainly been my idea, where we were going there with that one, but Liz's. So anyway, we share a lot of responsibilities, but.
And we do sometimes talk about things at like Thanksgiving or Christmas. I mean, we do.
Does it work that Tony, you have the initial idea and you outline it, and then you pass it back and forth, and like a game of tag for your draft? Or
Well, there are people who are pantsers and people who are outliners, and we tried being pantsers once, and that was a disaster. So we pretty much outline everything. So when we start especially a book, we generally know where we're going with that. And so I may come back sometimes and say, well, look, I really don't think this is working. I want to take this direction, or Liz might read and say, this isn't working for me either. And so, we'll do those kinds of negotiations, but by and large, because we're outliners, we sort of know where things are going. Does that make sense?
Yes, I would think a lot of mystery writers would tend to more. I know there are pantsers, but would tend more toward the plotter side of the spectrum, just because you've got to stay ahead of the reader and figure out, you at least know who done it. So the ending presumably is going to be the revelation of who done, unless it's a series, I suppose.
That's how we work. And it works for us, right?
All right, and then Ross and Karen.
I think we work very differently from that. I think we're both sort of pantsers, and for your viewers who don't know what we're talking about, we write by the seat of the pants. We don't know where we're going necessarily from the get-go. And all we did in the beginning was agree on a premise for the story. And that took a couple of emails back and forth. And then we would each write. And I think I started writing first, but the current introduction, the first page was written that got published was written by Karen. At any rate, I would write some, throw it over the fence to Karen, and she would write some and throw it back over the fence to me. And the story changed completely from the time we started till the time we finished. To give you an idea, the original title in my mind was Chainsaw Clowns, and it ended up as The Curse of the Benjamin Mansion. So I'm going to throw it over the fence to Karen, and you talk some, because and by the way, we really enjoyed working together. I don't think she had great ideas, anyway, go ahead, Karen.
Oh, yeah. We found out our voice as a writer they're two completely different voices. And so we brainstormed ideas, because I had been in a haunted house experience where there were clowns with chainsaws. So I thought that would be great. But then Ross Carley found the mansion that we wanted to write about and have the party in it. And so we started looking up all the history about that mansion. It was fascinating. What is it? Really is the Benjamin Mansion, right?
Yeah, it's in southern Indiana, down on the Ohio River. We moved it up to Indianapolis.
Yeah, and so it was fun, reading what he wrote, and then that would inspire me to write the next chapter or scene, and then we just kept it going back and forth.
I think we agreed on a tagline, which Karen wrote, which I think tells the story. A Halloween party in a haunted house during COVID. What could possibly go wrong?
Well, it sounds like it's already gone wrong if it's a party during COVID.
Yeah, and we like to think of it too as Alfred Hitchcock meets Stephen King.
Ooh.
And Tony and Diana were very instrumental in helping us as editors. So thank you.
Yeah, that's one of the things about Sisters in Crime in the anthology. One of the reasons I enjoy writing for it is we have such great editors who, and being a former academic, I have a pretty thick skin as far as editing goes. Having published, I think I have 135 refereed publications in journals. And you have to have a pretty thick skin when you deal with editors, technical editors. I think that if you sit and listen to them, and Diana and Tony are great editors, they really, really helped us improve the story.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's good to hear.
And so is this the start of what will be a long and fruitful collaboration? Can we expect more Ross Carley and Karen Phillips stories in the future?
Well, possibly, but I keep telling him I have to finish my novel. So we'll see.
And of course, I put her to work designing this cover for my new one. But I hope so too. I already have a couple of ideas, Karen, we'll discuss.
And of course, we should talk about Sisters in Crime. So Elizabeth, why don't you tell us a little bit about Sisters in Crime and let esteemed audience know a little bit more about the organization?
Okay, I'll do my best. So Sisters in Crime was started in, I'm sorry, we actually
1986.
Yeah, it was like 1986. We actually had like a information that was sent out, but of course I can't remember it right now. 1986 by Sarah Perezki, and it was to help women authors, especially I think, from my understanding at the time, it was more difficult for women to break into the publishing world, especially like with mysteries and stuff. So she was a very successful writer, and she decided to start Sisters in Crime to help out. So that's Sisters in Crime National. And then one of the awesome things actually about Sisters in Crime is that there are local chapters. So ours specifically is Speed City Sisters in Crime, and that was started. It was by Brenda started it in 20.
It was the mid-aughts, somewhere.
Mid-aughts, so something like that.
2005, 2006, somewhere in there.
Right.
We were a spin-off of the Louisville chapter.
Yeah. So I didn't actually join until maybe like 5 years ago, and it's just it's a really wonderful chapter, I think, that we have. Before COVID, we would meet once a month at a different place with different speakers. During COVID, we kept it online with Zoom. And actually, I think after COVID, we will start meeting in person again, but we'll still have a Zoom component to it for people who want to be part of the chapter, but are not, close enough by. And so it's and then we often have guest speakers. Often we would have sometimes once or twice a year guest speakers who came in to help with like the art of writing or the craft of writing, like a Hank Phillippe Ryan and Lori Rader Day, and one I didn't get to go to, which I wish I could have, was Reese Bowen. And it's just a really wonderful organization for men and women, for women and men, I should say. It's family for women, but we have lots of Mr. Sisters in our chapter. And in fact, when I first joined, it was a man who was the president of our chapter, but a lovely person named Michael Dabney, who was one of the editors of the last anthology. But yeah, it's a wonderful organization, and
I think there's something over 3,000 members nationwide, and that there a lot of great things are put on by the national chapter. There are webinars on writing, craft, and so on. And so, in fact, things that other chapters put on, I'm signed up for a getting the most bang for your book being put on by the Northern California chapter of Sisters in Crime, which is Michelle Dreyer is the new president of that. Karen belongs both to our chapter and the Sacramento, California chapter. So she's a multiple chapter member. But there are people, when you go to conferences, mystery writers conferences and mystery and thriller conferences, there's always a big Sisters in Crime presence there. And you know, at a breakfast at BoucherCon, one of the largest conferences, the last time we were in New Orleans, there were 400 people at the Sisters in Crime breakfast at BoucherCon. So it's a very active organization and very friendly and very helpful, and great if you're interested in getting, those of you who are looking at this, you think you want to write a novel or short stories, Sisters in Crime is a great place to get involved. We have readers. One of the things you didn't mention, we have published authors, we have readers, we have playwright. One of our members is a national award-winning playwright. So if you're interested in writing plays, it's a place to come.
Actually, our chapter did a play. Diana, you can probably speak to that better than I can.
Okay, I was going to bring up some of the other things that our chapter offers that all chapters may not do, but one of the things that we tried was to write a play as a group, and we actually got it done. We got it produced at Indie Fringe in 2018, I think it was, and the chapter made a little bit of money off of it, and right now that work is going to be published with another one-act play that was produced or written by Crystal Rhodes, who is the playwright that Ross was mentioning. She's very acclaimed and provided us with her expertise and her skill at writing a play. It was a great experience. And that was another collaborative effort that many of us in the chapter were involved in. I want to mention also that our chapter offers a critique group. Once a month, we get together, and if you have written something and you would like someone else's experience on your work, it can be an early draft of something, it could be a final draft of something, or you could be a new writer or an experienced writer. We accept anything if you want to participate in the critique group. And Ross right now, I think, is organizing that.
I look at myself like a kind of a moderator or a facilitator, but yeah, I'm the one. I run the Zoom meeting that is the critique group. The same Saturday we have a chapter meeting at 10 o'clock in the morning. We have a critique group meeting.
We also have in the past had weekend retreats that we do all these fundraisers with our anthologies and the play, and then we use the funds to kind of supplement the cost of a weekend retreat for our members. And we've met at Bradford Woods a couple of times, which is a neat old homestead that was in the woods. Is owned by Indiana University, I think now, but it's a really cool, it's supposed to be haunted, and it's a great place for mystery writers to be. And we've had to forego that. We tried to do it every 2 years, but of course, because of COVID, we haven't been able to do that. But that's one of the plans for in the future. And
well, I think another thing that we do is functions at libraries, for example. Go out to a library. Now we're doing them virtually, but we'll have a panel of authors at the library gather together and talk about our writing and sign books and so on. again, we're in a virtual mode, but we're doing those, still doing those functions.
One other thing that's kind of important that we do is with all these anthology projects, not only does it give unpublished members an opportunity to submit their work to get published, and so you get a publication credit, but we also have members submit their artwork for the cover. We've had members function as editors. Tony and myself in this group have edited a few, not always together. I think this was our only project together so far yet, but it was a lot of fun. But we offer the opportunity to anyone who wants to step in and learn that process. And also actually getting the book published. We've had a small press publisher do about 4, maybe 5 of our anthologies, but we've done self-publishing through Amazon with a couple of the projects. So that's another whole skill that you might not feel like you can tackle on your own. So we try to give everybody who's interested a feel for getting their work published. And then the play, of course, was a new venture for a lot of people.
Well, here's a crucial question for the audience. If I'm a mystery writer of a middle grade novel, hypothetically, or a young adult novel, would there be a place for me within the Sisters in Crime?
Sure.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. Absolutely. We have no, it's not like we're devoted to adult fiction or children's fiction or anything like that. We have people who write in every genre and a subgenre of mysteries. And then we also, have a wide diversity of audience for that. So yeah, Rob, you'd be welcome. Would love to have you.
And we also have several listservs so that there are these subgroups within Sisters in Crime where you can go and have a forum for just middle grade, YA, and any question you want to ask, crime related, or, there's a lot of resources out there for different categories of mystery.
What if I want to write romance, but occasionally there's a detective in there? How far out of the genre can I be and still be welcome within the Sisters in Crime?
I think as long as there's a dead body. No. Yeah, no, there's a lot of romance writers that write mystery. So that's part of it too.
And then, Marianne, I'm going to throw this to you. What does esteemed audience need to know about the new Trick and Treat anthology, which is available now?
Well, I think number one, that just in the anthology theme this year is so much fun. Trick or treat for mystery writers, what could be better? And you have such a variety in this anthology. Boy, it's just like, grabbing candy from a candy jar. You get to spend a little time on this one and then maybe, skip around to another one. And I think it's just going to be a real enjoyment for any mystery lover, anyone who enjoys Halloween.
So I know the last time we did this, episode 79, esteemed audience, make sure you listen to that either directly after this or directly before. You've got your day sorted. We talked about the theme of 2020, and it was a little bit about vision. I believe we talked about the 20th chapter within the Bible at one point, a lot of different variations on 2020. What was the overall theme for submissions for Trick or Treat?
There's always some type of mystery to it. There's some type of a little bit of a thrill, since it is Halloween, that is included in the stories that I've read so far.
Well, if I could, I'll jump to the back of the book. And to answer your question, crumbling mansions and ancient cemeteries, haunted houses and med school dissection rooms, all are terrible places to visit on the spookiest night of the year. So of course, the authors of the Speed City Sisters in Crime go there, and you can go with them From Halloween parties to autumn festivals to trick-or-treaters, Indiana is the home of ghosts, apparitions, and in the flesh evil ones in this time and in yesteryear. 16 tales for All Hallows Eve, when the veil between the afterlife and this life thins and the night fills with wonder and dread.
Yay.
Well said.
When well, if I can just interject here, when Diane and I, started looking at doing this anthology, our thought process was that it had to relate to Halloween or some activity that was wrapped around that particular holiday, and we wanted stories that were between 3,000 and 6,000 words, and really that was what we said, and we were delighted with the way people interpreted that and came up with really interesting, fascinating things. Diana, do you want to add anything to that?
So I love the variety of the submissions that we got. People are great about coming up with their own take on what Halloween means and what their favorite parts of Halloween are. Obviously, enough so that they could write a story about it. But we have some from the past and some kind of futuristic or sci-fi sort of like, and everything in between. It was really fun.
So with all the submissions that you got, Tony and Diana, our fearless editors, how do you go about the impossible task of winnowing that down to the number of the anthology? Do you throw them all up in the air and whichever one's landed on the table, they're in, and whichever ones are on the floor, nope, sorry, submit next year?
Well, it was a blind submission. I want to emphasize that too. The only person who knew what stories were connected to the authors was Elizabeth. Elizabeth was the person that stripped out the name and everything and sent the rest of it on to Diana and I. And we both read the stories, and then we sort of ranked them before we talked about them together. And then it was just a matter of we knew from the size of the book that we probably could take 16, 17, maybe 18 stories if we could get a word count that worked in there. Like if some people had a 3,500 one, that would allow extra room, so we might be able to fit in a 17th story or whatever. And we just sort of empirically played with it. We were delighted that we felt like so many of the stories needed little tweaks. And then we had some that we definitely felt we needed some edits to make the story cohesive, and all the authors were great to work with. We really, I'm trying to think, where there were really only 2 or 3 stories that didn't work out, and mainly the authors themselves pulled the plug on them.
I was going to add to that. Some of them we gave I don't think they agreed with the suggestions maybe that we came up with, or they didn't have time to make those corrections in the time frame we wanted. So they pulled the story, but there weren't very many. Most everybody was willing to at least entertain what our ideas were.
And so does it work that, you divide them up evenly, and Tony, you take one stack, and Diana, you take the other, and then you edit them and come back together? Or are you each editing every story and doing a separate pass?
I think each of us took a set of stories to do the first pass, but both of us edited all the stories.
After we had our first look at them and going through about half of them, then we shared our edits with each other, and then we got on the phone and went through them and discussed what we had suggested as an edit, and if the other person agreed with that or had a different idea, and that worked real well. Tony and I were in agreement almost always with things.
And
So
then
we had a good bunch of writers to work with too.
We,
That
we
was great.
did. We did. We
Mhm.
had a great bunch of writers to work with.
so Karen, as a submitter to the anthology, I assume you got edits from Diana and Tony. Were they absolute tyrants, or what was your experience of being edited?
Oh, it was a great experience. They had good suggestions, and if Ross Carley and I had a question or thought maybe what they suggested might not work, we would have a discussion. So, but I think 90% of what they suggested we incorporated.
And then we've got lots of questions about writing mysteries. I know that we're coming right up on the time that Liz needs to leave. And I try never to have someone on the podcast that I don't ask this question of. So before you go, I'm going to start with you and I'm going to ask everybody. Liz Perona, have you ever seen a flying saucer and or a ghost?
I have not.
Tony, have you seen any ghosts or flying saucers since the last time we did this?
Not since the last time, no. And I think I told you my ghost story the last or my angel story the last time. So, but I haven't had an experience like that since.
Gotcha. And we'll just go right around the screen since we're there. Diana, have you seen a ghost and or a flying saucer?
Oh, when I was young, like maybe 5th or 6th grade, I was at a party and we all saw something in the sky, and the host dad loaded us all in the car and we went chasing around town trying to get a better look. So that was my closest thing to a flying saucer. We never figured out what it was. It was just a bunch of weird shaped lights. Ghosts? Not really. No.
I should clarify, by the way, if you've got like a Bigfoot story or you saw a leprechaun, don't hold out on me. Make sure you. Elizabeth, you're next on the screen.
No.
Fair enough. And Marianne?
Yeah, funny story. Just this past winter, I was looking out the big window and saw 5 orbs in the sky, night sky. And so I quick ran and got my cell phone, got a picture of it. And then I noticed as I was moving about that one would disappear, then come back, and another would disappear, then come back. I finally realized it was a reflection of the recessed lights inside the house. But looking out, it just looked like, oh my gosh, these orbs are just hovering out there. What are they? But I did use that picture on a lot of people. And as far as ghosts, I would have to say more of like an experience where an intervention almost. For example, one time I was came to a stoplight at an intersection, and I had an envelope up on the dashboard, and my windows were up, there was no air on, and the envelope just all of a sudden fell to the floor, like somebody had just swiped it off of there. And I quickly went to pick it up, and the light had turned green while I did that. And by the time I started to go, a car had just blown through the intersection with a red light and going at a high speed. And I would have been broadsided had I not stopped to pick up that envelope when that got swiped off the dashboard. But a lot of different things like that, where it's like somebody's watching out for me.
So it's possible there's an alternate timeline where you're not here anymore.
Yeah.
Doubled up.
Oh, that would leave it open for a lot of comments.
And Karen, how about you?
No flying saucers, no ghosts, but I did have something like what Marianne experienced, where I was snorkeling and the wind picked up and the waves were putting water in my snorkel tube, and I was tired from swimming and I started hyperventilating, and somebody out of nowhere just grabbed me and swam me to shore, and all I saw was their fins disappear under the water. And then I don't know where they went.
And Ross?
Well, you're asking somebody who's been in the space program.
So you know.
Well, I don't know.
And he can't talk about it.
Well, there are things I can't talk about, but I don't think there are. I have not seen what I really believe there are that the UFOs that people are reporting are real, a lot of them. But I've never experienced one personally. I've had an experience. My daughter named Renee died when she was 14 years old, and I have felt her presence on more than one occasion when I was under high stress. And I don't know what it's almost, again, you called it an intervention. Maybe that's what they are. They've only happened 3 or 4 times, but I have felt Renee's presence, and I can't call it a ghost, but that's the closest I can come.
Mm-hmm.
Well, pivoting back to writing, back to mysteries. Here is the most difficult and impossible question that I ask. And Liz, I'll throw this one to you before you leave us.
Speak out fast enough.
You were this close. I saw you getting ready. I always ask, what is your favorite, since we're talking about mysteries, what is your favorite mystery novel and what writers have most influenced you?
Oh, I love Harry Potter, and I know that's not a mystery, but I just absolutely love Harry Potter. So I think and I really love young adult fiction. Like, I would pick that any day over like an adult novel. I just love it. And I think it's the teacher in me that I love that.
Well, I would say every Harry Potter novel is a mystery. It's just the solution always happens to be the defense against the dark arts teacher. And Tony?
Boy, a favorite. It kind of depends on the moment. But somebody that I really admire and look up to is William Kent Krueger. I think his mysteries are beautifully written. They're so full of life and purpose and meaning, and the guy, like I said, just writes. I wish I could write like that. He has ways of setting scenes that just bring you right in there, and so he is, I think, just a remarkable writer, and his last standalone novel, which was called This Tender Land, it remains one of my very favorites. It's just wonderful. It's sort of a coming of age.
City Sisters of Crime just had him for a virtual event, Ralph.
They did, yeah. Yep. And anyway, and if you have not, this is to anybody out there in the audience, if you have not read William Kent Krueger, he's got a series, but if you don't want to get wrapped up in the series, read his 2 standalone novels, Ordinary Grace and This Tender Land. They are amazing, amazing novels. In fact, the Ordinary Grace won the Edgar Award the year it was published. And I was really disappointed that This Tender Land did not get nominated for an Edgar, because it was just a remarkable novel.
And Ross, same question to you. Favorite mystery and writers who've most influenced your work?
Well, it's easy to answer who influenced me the most. It's Les Roberts. Les wrote and still writes. He's in Cleveland now, but he wrote mysteries starting out in Los Angeles, and then wrote, I think, 17 set in Cleveland. And he is, and he's a friend now, but he is I was a close friend of my wife's sister. And so I met him, kind of a long story, had coffee with him every time I went to Cleveland. I read all of his novels. I loved him. And he finally said, Ross, you ought to write your own mystery. And he was really the one who inspired me to start writing novels. As far as my favorite one of all time, probably John Ross MacDonald's book called The Galton Case, which goes so far beyond. It's a psychological thriller and a mystery set mainly in Canada. And The Galton Case is one that I have probably reread 10 times.
Karen?
Authors who have influenced me, definitely Stephen King, Alfred Hitchcock, Edgar Allan Poe, and Dennis Lehane, Robert Cray. I love humor and dark humor. One of my favorite authors is C.J. Box, and he writes an excellent series that is about a game warden out in Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
I see Ray Bradbury in your stuff too.
Oh yes, I forgot to mention him.
And Marianne?
As far as a mystery that I would recommend is, I love Louise Penny. You know, I do tend to get on the bandwagon with different authors, but lately I've been reading a lot of her books, and The Better Man. Recently I read The Brutal Telling, and I love her humor that she throws into the books. She seems to have that whole package, you know, the plot, the characters, the setting, you know. It's just really, I wish I could do that, you know. It's just so neat that she can pull that all together the way she does. And, you know, I really enjoy reading everything. Her Armand Gamache reminds me so much of Agatha Christie's Hercule Poirot. A lot of similarities there, I think. Yeah, I'd really recommend her books.
Elizabeth?
So trying to like pick one author that you love is sort of like, I don't know, asking a crack addict to, you know, pick their favorite drug. Well, no, or
I think that would be easy for a crack addict.
Okay, no, maybe I need to be more general, but to ask a drug addict to pick their favorite drug. How about that? Anyway, so two authors that I like, whenever they come out with anything, I always go get their books, is Jim Butcher, and especially his Dresden Files. I love those books, although in his last book, he killed off one of my favorite characters. So I'm still kind of mad at him. And Charlene Harris, who I have had the delight of meeting actually a couple of times. And I don't know if you guys have read any of her books. She runs the gamut of, you know, like she has cozies, and a lot of her stuff was like, you think of like the vampire stuff. But they're all definitely mysteries. She's this tiny little lady. She's like maybe 5 feet tall, if that. And she's, you know, kind of a sort of seems like Southern lady or whatever. And I just remember when I was meeting her, I was like, how does she come up with all this weird stuff? And, you know, I was like, I mean, it's just amazing, the books that she comes up with. Like actually the Midnight Texas, well, it was called the Crossroads trilogy, but then they made it into a TV show called Midnight Texas, which only lasted 2 seasons, unfortunately. But I don't know, I love her stuff. There's a lot more authors that I love, like Lori Raider Day, actually, who is a member of our chapter, as well as being one of the past presidents of National. She's a wonderful writer. I love her books. There's just too many to mention. Sorry.
And Diana.
Well, I love everybody. I've read everything everybody's mentioned, every author they've all mentioned, but I'll throw out a few other names that are really good. Sarah Perezki, who's the founder of Sisters in Crime. S.J. Roseanne, who's done a lot of, she's a real good writer and a real good chapter friend. I like Elmore Leonard. I like Tony Hillerman. Stephen King. I think somebody mentioned him already. All the Sherlock Holmes books. I grew up on all those, and I just was an avid reader, and it's hard to pick a favorite. Probably my favorite book that I've read multiple times, besides Harry Potter. I've read that a lot, but To Kill a Mockingbird. Your middle-aged readers might have read that by now. It's a real good classical story that if they haven't read it, they will by the time they get out of high school, I think.
Yeah, I like
try and say they did, and then read it when they were older and say, "Oh my God, why did I skip this in high school?"
Mhm.
I want to mention this one. It's the one I'm reading now. It just won the Anthony Award at VoucherCon. It's called Blacktop Wasteland by Cosby, an African-American writer, and this is an absolutely amazing book. I had not even heard of him before, and that's my own ignorance, but this book won the Anthony Award this year, and I'm just about finished with it, and I highly recommend. It's a very powerful and somewhat dark novel, but he's a powerful writer.
And then I'm always wanting to know about writers' work habits, and look at this. We had 7, now we've got 6 authors still with us, and I want to know each of your habits. And if 2 of you tell me that you do the same thing every time and are successful, then I'm chucking what I do, and I'm doing that. Elizabeth, let's start with you.
I'm probably not a good person to start with. I'll do things like take Rob Kent's class at the Indiana Writer Center that forces me to write a lot, so that you will not make fun of me in class.
Well, that's not true. I did that anyway. I'm a terrible teacher.
I didn't think so. Actually, I thought that the class that I took was really useful. I was going to take your class upcoming, but then they put it back on Zoom again, and I'm just like, I'm on Zoom. I'm on video too much already as it is with my job. I'm just I wanted to see people in person again, but the Writer Center had to put it off again. So
I was heartbroken that the not enough folks got vaccinated, and now we've got variants out there. But hopefully one of these days we're going to get back together in person, because there's just no substitute for it.
Yeah, I just got my booster shot the other day. So
Yeah, so did I.
Congratulations to both of you. And I should point out, Elizabeth has the distinction of being the first former student who's been on the podcast.
Really?
That is a thrill for me.
That's kind of wild. Yeah, because some of the people in the class that I took, I was so impressed with what they were writing. I was like, wow, like these people are way better than I am. So, but yeah, I mean, usually if I get up early enough in the morning, that's my best time to write, because I'm just coming off of sleep, and I think about stuff like all night long, and I tend not to do actually as well late at night, and so I'm actually struggling right now, because it's like, this is really late for me. So, but yeah, so I try to get something written in the mornings.
Let's toss in reading habits as well to this question. So that's your writing. What are your reading habits?
I listen to audiobooks almost exclusively now. I used to be a voracious book reader, and then I switched to Kindle, but I started listening to audiobooks probably about 15 years ago, and they just especially with Audible and the advent of MP3 players and stuff like that, where you can just stream the books, and now I just tell Alexa to play my audiobook for me at night and set a sleep timer. But yeah, I mean, I still read voraciously, but it's actually listening to it more than anything.
tell you, my New Year's resolution this year after the hellscape that was 2020 was enough politics, no more. The election happened. Every time I go to listen to anything about politics or watch the news rather than just read it and be done with it, I would put on an audiobook. Like, nope, I'm blocking all of that out. And I have enjoyed my life so much more this year. And I've gotten more books knocked out that I would have missed, wasting my time fretting about things that unfortunately they don't ask my opinion on. I keep waiting for that call from Washington. Rob, what should we do? And it never comes.
I'm like, I have all the answers. They should just listen to me. But yeah, especially with audiobooks though, who's reading it, it makes a big difference. Because like one of the Jim Butcher Dresden Files, I don't think I would have continued on with the series except that James Marsters read those books. And so the first two books are good, but I mean, they become excellent like 3 on. And if it hadn't been for James Marsters reading it, the dude's just excellent. And I mean, he takes a really good book and makes it, I think, kind of into a great book. So.
Ross, let's go to you next. What are your writing and reading habits?
Well, my first of all, when I get up in the morning, I will pick a time to write. And my ideal schedule, which I managed to do about 3 times a week, is I like to get up and edit what I wrote the previous day first. I take a look at what I wrote the previous day, get in my mind where I'm going. I go for a walk, and I usually walk about 2.5 to 3 miles. I come back, and when I come back, I sit down and write. Now that's the optimum day, but I do consulting, so I may have a Zoom meeting, a consulting meeting, or whatever. But if I have that, I will have set aside a time to write in the afternoon or whenever. I don't write well in the evening. Evening is I generally reserve for reading, and I usually have at least 3 books going at any time. Maybe an ebook on my computer, and then a couple others that I'm reading in print version. But I read, I think most of us are voracious readers. I probably read I read about a book a week on the average.
And eeny, meeny, miny, mo, Marianne.
Oh no. Oh, after hearing everyone else, I'm like, ugh. You don't really want to hear my habits. I'm kind of all over the place. Right now I have my own book in the works, another book I'm collaborating with my granddaughter, and I just submitted another short story to a magazine. So, I'll have like a dry spell, and then it's like whoosh, all at once. And so not a lot of rhyme or reason to how I tackle things. It changes constantly.
Well, it's working. You know how I know? You're in the new Sisters in Crime anthology, and you're on the Middle Grade Ninja podcast, so it's going all right.
Well, and thanks to the editors who were just fantastic. I mean, they really were. It was great to work with them, and can't say enough about them. As far as reading, I just love to read, and I love to read a variety. I like to throw in something once in a while that is not a genre I usually will read. I downloaded your Banneker, your book. Am I saying it wrong? Just started that, your free one on Kindle.
Oh, you mean Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot?
Banneker Bones, yes. Yeah, I would say that wrong. But I enjoy, the kids' books as well. So kind of all over the place.
I'm very flattered, and I hope you enjoy it.
Oh, thanks.
Diana?
Okay, so I used to have a really good writing habit where I would take my lunch hour at work and just go sit by myself in the cafeteria and write for an hour. And usually it was just freehand. And then that the rest of the day or that evening, I would be thinking about what I wanted to do the next day on my lunch hour. But once I started my own business, I no longer had a lunch hour. So it was a whole different world. And I would keep a notebook by my bed. And if I thought of something when I woke up at night, I would write it down. So I have a good sized notebook full of story ideas and single lines or dreams or, you know, just ideas to get me going on the next story. But what I've found works for me is to commit myself to a submission submission opportunity, and they always have a deadline. And if I'm writing towards a deadline, I can focus a lot more on that. So I like to have a deadline. But the whole pandemic thing has just really thrown me off my game, and I just I've had a struggle trying to write fiction with all the horrors that have been happening in 2020 and currently this year. So hopefully soon I've got things in mind that I want to do and plan my schedule so I can get that hour a day at least, because you can get things done if you devote a certain amount of time to it. Okay, and what I like to read, right? I do listen to audiobooks. I have one all the time when I'm sitting at the microscope doing work. I have an audiobook going. I try to actually read a chapter in a novel, a chapter or two, not too much, before I go to bed at night. And sometimes if I'm traveling somewhere by myself, I'll have the audiobook on in the car. So I usually have several things going at one time.
And that's been a big change. I think that COVID has come along. I used to travel for work a lot, and I don't do that anymore. And I would read, you know, I'm going to San Francisco and I change planes in Denver. I can finish a book by the time I get back home, and we're just not traveling anymore like that. So I'm actually having more trouble finding time to read than I am finding time to write.
Well, I've replaced my travel time with video game time, and video game time is the perfect time for an audiobook because video games are just bing, bing, boom, boom, boom. You don't need to hear that. Just turn that down a little bit and you can enjoy a wonderful story. And it's like driving a car, except you're still home, and when you're done, you're done. It's fun. Karen, what are your writing and reading habits?
I'm most productive in the morning, and I'm like Diana. I really excel when I'm under a deadline. And I used to work for a newspaper, so I'm really oriented that way. And short stories are perfect for that. You know, you have a definite finite submission period, usually, I don't know, 6 months, a little more sometimes. And I always read my work before I submit it. When you read it out loud, rather, it really, you really pick up on things that need to be edited that you didn't catch when you're just reading silently. In terms of my reading habits, I like to read in the evening.
I know that one of our members, in fact, the current president of the Sisters in Crime chapter, Janet, she's a journalist, and she will write a short story, and what she does is she reads it out loud backwards, starting with the last paragraph and going back through the story. And I think that's really interesting. I tried it, didn't work for me, but it works for some people. And I think reading out loud does help. But I'm aware of some people, they actually go through it backwards, a paragraph at a time.
Good news, esteemed audience. If you go back and you listen to episode 79, you can hear Janet on this very program talking about her reading and writing habits. And last but never least, returning champion Tony Perona. And you know, it occurred to me that this is your third appearance. So you are either tied or you may be the most recurring guest because you were on the previous the Speed City Sisters in Crime. And then, of course, you and I were on a panel together in 2017, which esteemed audience can find back in the catalog as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's great to be on again, Rob. It really is.
I'm gonna make you co-host next time.
Oh boy. Okay, well, aside from your desperation, I'll answer the question. But you know, I'm a terrible procrastinator. I really am. I'm awful. And that's why I wonder if saying what my writing habits are, it really would help anybody, because I'm
I know what you mean.
um, I used to, like Diana, when I was working, I'm now retired, but when I was working and I was under a deadline because Liz and I had signed the contract with Midnight Ink. And so we had a book a year to write, and I was the deputy town manager for the town of Plainfield at the time. And that was such a busy job, and trying to find time to finish this novel, all the novels, was just really a challenge. But because I had that, I knew I had to write. I would get up an hour before I left for work, and then I would write on my lunch hour. And I was very regimented, and I got a lot done. Now that I'm retired, heck, it's hard for me to sit. I'll sit down and I'll think of things I have, other things I could be doing, and I'm also one of those people who I'll be started on a project and I'll think of something else that I'd like to write instead of the project that I'm on, especially if I'm about halfway through it. You know, it's like, oh, wait a minute, what if I like this story, and so yeah, it's a wonder sometimes that I get things done. But yeah, I guess the most important thing for me is nothing motivates like a deadline. When I have a deadline, I get it done. So that's probably my key thing. As far as writing, as far as reading, what I wanted to say is, I don't know how people, and you guys, it sounds like you all are able to do a lot of things, like when you listen to an audiobook, or my wife will read a book while she's watching television at the same time. And I love to focus on a book. I don't even have music going when I'm reading, because I just love the words and I love what the author is doing, and I don't want to be distracted from that. And in consequence, I don't get a lot of books read, which is both good and bad. I richly enjoy the books that I read, but I don't read a lot of them. And so that's just me. I have to be able to just focus on what the writer is saying. I just can't do multiple things. So I guess that's maybe a negative habit. I don't know. But I like to not, when I read, I like to not have music on, or like if I'm on a plane, I may put my headphones on so I don't hear distracting noise, but I won't play the music. Like it looks, if anybody else would think I'm listening to music, I just have the noise blocked out so I can read.
I'm the same way, Tony.
Are you?
Yeah, I can't even listen to music when I'm reading.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear somebody else is like that.
You're not the only weirdo.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Earphones, if nothing else, would do a nice job of keeping people from feeling like they should talk to you while they're sitting next to you and you're trying to read.
Yeah.
And I'm curious with the deadlines, if you were to set a deadline, does it have to be official, or if you just say, hey, I'm going to pretend that my deadline is Friday, does that work or no?
Not real well, because I know it's changeable. It's
You say which Friday?
Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't seem to work. If I have a deadline, like for a short story submission or something like that, then okay, in my mind, if I really want to get this story into I recently submitted for one of the Mystery Writers of America national books, and I really thought I had a great story, wanted to make sure it got in there, and so I was working on a deadline, and so those are hard deadlines. But if it's just me, I'm terrible. I really am. One of the things that I've started doing now since Midnight Ink closed up shop, they closed their Llewellyn, who was the parent company of Midnight Ink, shut down the imprint. And so now Liz and I are experimenting with self-publishing, Rob, and I may be talking to you soon about that. But, that I think, what I think I need to do there is to tell people that I'm going to have a book out on a certain date. And then because I've told people, now it becomes a deadline, right? I can't put it off. So I'm thinking that may be the way I'm going to get myself motivated in the future.
That can work. It blew up in my face terribly when I did the Book of David. I released it as a serial novel, and I wrote ahead, of course, and I had the first 3, and I thought, well, the last 2 will be relatively easy, and I can get those done and edited. Because I had my editor available to me, and I have my critique partners and my early readers available. And I thought, well, okay, I'm in the midst of 4. I'll go ahead and I'll put out 1, and I'll let everybody know that, next month you'll get the next one. And sure enough, I fell behind, and I was almost a year late on the 5th one. And I had the angriest emails from readers like, you left us on a major cliffhanger. How are we ever going to read the end of the story? And I said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I will never do this again. I wish I had just made up the deadline and kept quiet about it until it was all
Okay, well, that's good to know.
Don't make my mistake, Tony.
Thank you.
Save yourself.
Thank you. I'll just keep procrastinating then.
Well, I'm watching our time, and I know it's getting late, so it's probably time to start thinking about landing this thing. But thank you, all of you, for making time this evening and for being such insightful and a wonderful guest. I've had a wonderful time, and I'm sure esteemed audience has as well. My final question is always some variation. If you could go back and tell yourself at the start of your writing career or in the middle, wherever would be useful to you, give yourself some advice that would have made your path easier and might make easier the paths of everyone who's watching or listening to us right now. What would you go back and tell yourself? And then also let esteemed audience know about your website or where they can find you online. And Ross, let's start with you.
Wow. Control alternate word delete. In other words, I had to learn to pack it down. Too much information. I won't go further than that. I actually learned that before I started writing novels. I learned that in the 4 nonfiction books that I authored. I had to learn that as I was writing technical stuff. And it absolutely carried over into the novels. But I wish I had known that, before I started writing some of the other books. And what was the other question?
Just where can esteemed audience find you online?
Well, my website is www.rosscarleybooks.com. That's easy enough. And my Instagram is & Ross Carley author. So it's Ross Carley author on Instagram. And I'll let it go at that. I think Facebook, I have a Facebook account, which is Ross Carley Books on Facebook.
And Karen?
Yes, so let's see. I would say to younger or new authors, feel confident in your story, in your writing ability, and just write the story. And then when you ask for feedback, take that with a grain of salt, listen to the advice that you feel will help your story improve, and grow a thick skin, because you really do need to listen to that advice in order to become a better author. And I don't have an author website. I have a website for my cover design. It's phillipscovers.com. If anybody out there needs a cover for their newly published, soon to be published book.
I think Liz and Tony might be reaching out to you in the here.
Well, again, I'll put up a, this is Crypto Kill that Karen designed a cover for. There we go, which I love. Thanks, Karen.
And Marianne, what writing advice would you go back and give yourself?
I think I'd have to say, do what works best for you. There's always so many expectations out there and advice, and everyone's lifestyle is different and things going on in your life. And you just have to do what's going to work best for you and go for it. I wrote at a time when I was home with the kids. I was a social worker, and when I had my kids, I was home, and I wrote for a newspaper, children's stories, and that worked for me at the time. I had deadlines, and funny things happen. Like they said, oh, we're going to put author photos out there this week. And I already submitted my story, and it was The Ugliest Creature. So there's my picture next to The Ugliest Creature title. But, you just got to go with the flow and laugh it off. And so, different things. And writing sometimes can be something you don't publish. Going through experiencing family deaths, and did some writing at that time, and very personal, and something I still keep close to my heart, and but it was very helpful. So not everything has to be the award winning, and for you to still go for it. I encourage anyone, I'm really pushing that with my granddaughter, and she's really giving that love of writing, and I can do this, to all her other friends in school. So it's just do what works best for you, I think.
And have you got an online presence where we can find you?
Sure. You can find me at www.makoontz.com.
And Elizabeth, I assume your advice to yourself would be to take my workshop sooner. So vital.
Right? Totally. That is totally what I was going to say.
Excellent, Diana. No, I'm teasing.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think of what I would say to myself. I probably wouldn't listen, because I had not been listening to people. But somebody at one of the conferences that I went to said that that they were talking to someone who wasn't getting very much writing done because they were trying to be perfect, like basically the first time out. And I guess her response to the writer was, oh, please, like, you can't grow flowers. Like, it's a lot easier to grow flowers in manure. I will use that word instead, manure, rather than air, meaning just get something on the page or in the computer so that it can be edited down. And like, I remember when I heard that, I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. So it's sort of like I've given myself permission to be really, really bad at my writing, but just get something on the page. And
can we find you online someplace?
No, actually, I have a website, but I never put anything on it. So you wouldn't even be able to like, if you went there, it would just sort of be like have the title thing on it and nothing else. I've never actually put anything on the website, so I got nothing.
Keep your ear to the ground, esteemed audience, because it's my personal working theory that Elizabeth Sam Miguel is secretly the most powerful person in Indiana publishing. You're involved in almost every group. You show up almost every place where writers are, like Kaiser Soze, just there in the background pulling the strings.
I wish. If that were true, I would have gotten myself published more often than I have. So.
Let us turn now to our fearless editors. Diana?
Okay. DianaCatt.com. I'll start off with that. That's my website, and it's kind of out of date. I haven't added much lately. I think I've missed a few stories. But probably what I would want to tell myself as a beginning writer is to not be afraid. It's really, really hard to even get the courage up to let someone read your work. That to me was the most difficult step to take. I was fine because writing is a solitary effort usually, and you've got this thing in your mind and you're not sure if what you've put down on the paper actually captures how you want the story to look like, and maybe it doesn't capture how your favorite author writes at all, and so you might not have enough courage to let someone read it. So I join a critique group if you can find one at your library or at a bookstore or friends, or take a class in writing. When you take a class, most generally, if it's a creative writing class, you'll be submitting your work to other people in the class, and they will give you feedback. And then you'll get the chance to see that not everybody's stuff is good on the first draft. Usually it's not. And how people make the changes, and how you yourself can make the changes and improvements to your work. So be brave. Be brave, Diana. Go for it.
And future co-host Tony Perona, bring us home.
I think if I could go back and talk to my younger self, I would say to write consistently and stop trying to hit a home run. Be satisfied with base hits. I saw, because I was trying to make everything perfect. I was trying to, craft really, a story where everything was hidden, and I was trying to follow trends that were going on, and at the same time I was doing that, I saw people who I admire who were just publishing a book a year, and they weren't knocking it out of the park, but you know what? By their fourth or fifth novels, they were accumulating. First of all, they were getting better, and second of all, they were accumulating an audience. And I should have done that. That was, because when you look at it, I was first published in 2002, right? And so, next year is 20 years, and I have 8 books, which is great. But most writers would have had 20 books, at least a book a year, and many of them would have had more than that. And I think that I just really needed, I've learned since then that that's what you need to do. I still procrastinate terribly, but we're still working on that. We're still working on that. So that if you want to find me, www.elizabethperona.com. Even though I do have my first books, under Tony Perona, we have all that information on the website www.elizabethperona.com. And we have, and I will say, the 4th book in the Bucket List Mystery series, Murder in the Tattoo Parlor, will be out November 1st. So we're excited about that. So book number 4, yay.
Congratulations on your launch. And
I want to say thank you, Rob. Thanks for hosting. Thanks for having us on. You did a great job. Thank you.
Speed City Sisters in Crime. It was my pleasure. I can't believe I started with Of Crime. I don't know why people still agree to come on this show, but I'm so glad you did. We had a wonderful time. As always, esteemed audience, For interviews with all the best people, head to middlegradeninja.com. Download your free copies of Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees and or the Book of David, Chapter 1. And God will look at them alive. I'll see you next week.